In this video, we'll be taking a look at SLOO by TimXR. SLOO is a voice swarm synthesizer, unique in its approach but maintaining a fun and intuitive GUI and capable of creating a multitude of different sounds. We'll begin with a closer look at some of the presets that come with the synthesizer, and then we'll take a look at the swarm features and how we can create new swarm patterns to alter the sound, and also using the Morph Crossfade to completely transform the sound source. So I have an instance of SLOO loaded here. Let's dive around some of the presets that come with the synthesizer. These give a great example of what the synth is capable of, especially when you experiment with the morph control or the morph crossfade control that's automatically mapped to the modulation wheel. Which produces some quite crazy transitions on the sound source. Now let's take a look at the parameters we find down here on the synthesizer. So each one of these controls, some more familiar than others, have 3 parameters. The left hand knob controls the center point of the flock of swarm voices. The middle button generates a new swarm pattern for the voices. And the right control controls the distance that values for each voice swarm from the center point. So with this down to 0, we're not going to have any effect on the sound, creating new swarm patterns. Turning the distance knob up introduces more and more influence from the swarm pattern. With the distance knob fully up, the parameters swarm at the furthest point from the center. We get these 3 controls for all of these controls down here. So we can use the pan and the swarm pattern and distance knob to add some nice width to our sound. Individual parameters can swarm in different densities, so we could have the pitches very close. The FM pitch won't have an effect on the sound until we bring up the FM amount. So close pitch distances and set the filter resonances quite far away from each other. And it's a great way to experiment and come up with new tones. Now let's take a look at the Morph Crossfade. This crossfades between the settings on the left hand side and the right hand side. You can either slide the morph control to morph or use our modulation wheel. Or load a new patch in here. So as we set parameters on the left hand side, we can do the same on the right hand side. And then morph between the 2 sound sources. We can add parameters for the right hand side if they're not on here by clicking the right arrow here and then make our parameter changes. We can also use an envelope to modulate this morph control, clicking on its plus icon. can see the envelope is dialed up here. We could sweep the attack up to slowly transition between the two different morph settings. Now we don't need to morph, slide or use the modulation wheel, we automatically apply an envelope to that morph control. We also get a few extra options here where you see these plus icons. So clicking on this plus icon here reveals some filter pitch controls. We'll dial that envelope down now. So we can select between a low pass, band pass or a high pass. Or on the LFO frequency control, we can click this and further customize some of the LFO parameters in here. As well as this, there's randomization controls for the left and right patterns, and they're linked to this history wheel in between them. Let's load up a new preset now. So we can set up to 16 randomization slots in here by using the start and length parameters. And then we can select how we switch between each one of these randomization slots. So if I do the forward mode, each MIDI note will trigger this clock one step forward, and we could select different parameters for each one of these steps. And so now when I play a key, each key will trigger this clock to move forward, and we select 16 different sound slots. For an ever-evolving sound. Or you could change the direction of the clock to reverse or randomize. Or we can turn it off. As you can see, SLOO is a really intuitive and fun synthesizer to use. When you dive under the hood a little bit more, there's a lot of advanced features that can really customize the behavior and tweak how the sounds interact with each other. Be sure to check out SLOO by Tim Exile, which is available now at adsrsounds.com.